Hello, everybody. Welcome to 2D Board Gamers. My name is Dave, and today I'm going to do a video about my favorite hero for each wave. What I'm defining as a wave is from between big boxes. So starts with a big box and goes until the last hero before the next big box. So for wave one, for example, that would be the core set of heroes all the way up until Hulk, which was the last hero before Rise of Red Skull. And then wave two would be Rise of Red Skull all the way up until Scarlet Witch, which is the last hero before Galaxy's Most Wanted, and etc. And I'll talk about each hero a little bit, but mainly my favorite. So, first of all, I don't hate any of the heroes of Marvel Champions, but I do have a favorite for each wave, and that's not necessarily the most powerful. Each hero is a unique experience, and while there's some heroes that I wish they had done a little different, maybe, I'm still pretty happy with every hero. So, Wave 1 is when the game first started back in 2019 and went through 2020. This is part of when we endured part of the pandemic and when the game was first get going. So the core set had Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Iron Man, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. Now I love the Black Panthers, doing the Wakanda Forever. Once you get them built up and then the Wakanda Forever kicks in, you can trigger the Black Panther upgrades. That's amazing. Captain Marvel's card draw, awesome. And one of my favorite decks is doing a Captain Marvel leadership where I have Agent 13 and Yondu, and I activate him multiple times. And Yondu with the Voltron, great. Iron Man, I love building the armor pieces up and then go aerial and just do some big swings. So he's a little slow setting up because you need to wait sometimes a couple turns before you come out of alter ego. But once Iron Man's got his suit up, he swings hard. She Hulk, well, she's a brick house. I love that, but when she can thwart an alter ego, which is pretty fun. Spider Man, well, who doesn't like our favorite friendly neighborhood Spider Man? The swinging web kick is great. Being able to web up people, awesome. Captain America, well, Captain America with his shield, he can do some massive damage. He's amazing. Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel came with some really cool cards that I really like. And the fact that you can ready her when you do an event and take an event back into your hand and use it again. That's awesome. Thor, you start swinging Mjolnir around. Amazing. Black Widow. I love setting up the preparation cards and then triggering them when different things happen. Doctor Strange, his spells are super powerful. And Hulk, well, Hulk smashes. So he can get some big, with the Hulk smash turns. It's amazing. But I'm gonna have to say my favorite hero for wave one is Black Widow. I really do love the preparation cards that she does. And we're getting more with at the time of this recording. Agents of Shield's coming out soon, which are more preparation cards, which is just going to add more to her deck. So I can't wait to try some of the new cards with Black Widow and that new practice plan card that's coming out. That's going to really help Black Widow. So the winner for Wave One is Black Widow. Okay, so for Wave Two, we have the typical six heroes that come in a wave. Wave one was a little different because it was the game started. Um, but so Rise of Red Skull, we got Hawkeye and Spider Woman. Now Hawkeye, of course, he has all these trick arrows that are great. The quiver helps gets them, so that's awesome. Spider Woman was our first character that that broke the normal deck building rules, which was awesome. You got to choose two aspects. You had to have equal number of cards, but you could start doing some combinations that you never could do before, which was great. So it's like, oh, I'll throw in aggression and leadership. Plus, she had hero kit cards that also counted as aspect cards. She's the only character who's done that. So like her pheromones is a leadership card that stuns and confuses. So it counts as a leadership card. So power of leadership can help pay for it, but it's part of her hero kit. Ant-Man and Wasp. Ant-Man was the first hero of what I call the triple changers, but basically it was a three-sided card. So you got the alter ego, you have one hero form, and then you have a second hero form. Amazing. Wasp does the same thing. Ant-Man, he got an ability when he swapped to the different forms, something would trigger. Like when he first becomes big, he deals the damage. Wasp, her powers were different whether she was giant or tiny. Quicksilver is awesome. He gets to activate multiple times. He's only a 1/1/1, as you can see here, but he had always be running, which he readied multiple times. And then Scarlet Witch with her hexes and chaos magic, that was amazing. So again, I like all these characters. I don't, but I think my favorite for Wave Two is Ant Man. I love the being able to switch to different forms. Ready to Rumble is a great card for him. Every time you change forms, you get some kind of ability that is just amazing. So for Wave Two, it's Ant Man. Okay, so for Wave Three, this is our Guardians of the Galaxy wave. So we have the five main Guardians of the Galaxy characters, and we also had Venom. So Groot, Groot and Rocket came in the Galaxy's Most Wanted box, and I love Groot's his growth counters. So he, which is a way to soak up damage, but also you could use the growth counters to trigger his different abilities, which is amazing. Rocket has lot. He loves guns. He has lots of different weapons in his kit and his Tinker ability. So when he's alter ego, you can take any tech card. Is it? Yeah, any tech card, and you can discard it, and you can draw two cards. And in protection, there's like lots of tech cards that he can play with. So you can always tinker cards that usually have like one charge left or something and get rid of it. The other thing was his guns stayed around even when they're out of charges, so he could tinker them. Star Lord's amazing. He's got what can go wrong. You could draw an encounter card and you get a 3 cost discount. Plus, the more encounter face down encounter cards he has in front of him, the better his cards are. You still have to deal with them in the encounter phase, during the villain phase, but at least during the hero phase, you've got a lot of fun things you can do. Gamora is the second character that we had that broke the normal deck building rules, which is awesome. She could have up to six. She could have up to six attack or thwart events from other aspects. So that's awesome. I usually kind of try to do a balance. Like I try to get like 3 attacks and 3 thwarts. It just kind of depends. If I'm playing Justice, maybe I'll do a bunch of attacks, or if I'm doing aggression, I might do a bunch of thwarts. But if I'm doing leadership or protection, then I usually try to kind of balance the attacks and the thwarts. Drax Drax loves to take damage. He gets +1. He likes to be attacked, I should say. Um, and he gets +1 for each vengeance counter. And after the villain attacks, he gets a vengeance counter. Once he's got 3 vengeance counters and he still gets attacked, he draw a card. So as long as he can stay in hero form and keep those vengeance counters going, he can um, he can draw cards, and his attack is pretty high. He's got a couple. He's got a knife that bumps him. bumps him up as well. Venom is another big gun character. I like the multi gun where you can even thwart with it. He's very versatile. Came out with the side holster, which is great for Rocket and for Venom. Um, my favorite for Wave 3, I mean, I like all these characters, but I'm going to have to lean for Star Lord. I just love the what can go wrong. You've got, you got to deal with a bunch of encounter cards, but it's just pretty fun. Um, because the more encounter cards you can get, the better um, his abilities are. So for Wave 3, it's Star Lord. All right, so Wave 4 was Mad Titan Shadows. Wave, this is the third part of the Infinity Wars, or no, the Infinity Stone saga. So this was sort of a mix between Guardians and Avengers, which was sort of like the conclusion of the story. So Adam Warlock, it was our third hero that had strange or that broke the deck building rules. He basically you chose the four aspects, um, and you had to have an even number of cards from each aspect. And you can only have one card from you can only put one copy of a non Adam Warlock card in your deck. And you had to do the four aspects as evenly as possible, but came up with some very interesting combinations. Spectrum, so she wasn't a, she's a form changer, kind of like Ant Man and Wasp, but she had three forms that that changed and altered her stats. So she had one that gives her +2 thwart, one gave her +2 attack, and one gave her +2 defense. And when you switch forms, you sometimes got an ability, or when you played a card, if you were in that form, you got an extra bonus, or you could switch to that form, or she had a couple change form cards. Nebula, so Nebula had techniques which are on the board. They're similar to the Nebula villain that came in Galaxy's Most Wanted. So that was cool. And the different techniques, when you began your turn, you resolved the special of all the techniques. That's pretty fun. War Machine's got lots of weapons, and he has ammo counters, and so it costs ammo counters to trigger his weapons. Some of his weapons are upgrades, some of his weapons are events, or some of his attacks use, I should say, his attacks use ammo as well, and you have to go down to Alter Ego to get some more ammo. And had a munition bunker. It was great. Vision had a mass form, so he could be solid or phased, similar to Shadowcat, which we'll see in a little bit. And then Valkyrie had the Death Glow, and when you put the Death Glow on an enemy, and then you defeat that enemy, you got a bonus. And then some of the her cards work differently on the Death Glow. And but the Death Glow stayed on someone until you defeated them. So if you put it on the villain, you're not moving it unless you go to Alter Ego to switch it. If you put it on a minion, once the minion's defeated, the Death Glow comes back. So I'm gonna say my favorite for Wave 4 is kind of a. I'm gonna say it's Spectrum. I just like being able to switch the different forms. Kind of gave me the same feeling as Ant Man. The Ready to Rumble card's another great card for her as well as Ant Man. And so, yeah, my Wave 4 hero choice is Spectrum. All right, so Wave 5 was Sinister Motive, which was Web Warriors and Champions, which Miles Morales is both. So we got some Web Warriors and we got some Champions. So this introduced two new tribal traits. So Ghost Spider, she has her fun thing is putting cards that have interrupts and responses. So if you play an event that has an interrupt or a response, then you got to ready her, and she had some web bracelets that did did some amazing things when you did interrupts and responses. Her events, she has a bunch of events that do that. So a lot of times you're doing a lot of damage or thwart, even in the villain phase, like when you're defending. So that's amazing. Spider-Man Miles, he has um, two specials that trigger. One is the Venom Blast, which he could deal 2 damage to an enemy and stun that enemy. And he has the Spider Camouflage that you give him a tough and confuse the enemy. And then he had some different cards that can trigger either the Venom Blast or the Camouflage. So he liked to stun and confuse. He's really good at that. He also had a card called Double Life, which allowed him to go to Alter Ego, and then that does not count as your form changing, and then you can come back. So it's sort of like, oh, you're down on some health. All right, I'll do a Double Life. I'll switch to Alter Ego. I'll take a recovery, and then I'll flip back so the villains are attacking instead of scheming. Nova is great. He has as long as he defeats an enemy or a side scheme, he can ready when he has a card that pops up that allows him to um, go crazy with that. So Ironheart starts off as version 1, which she's only got a hand size 4. She's a 1, 2, 3, so she's got standard stats, but she gets these progress counters, and then once you've got enough progress counters, then you build a better suit for her. And now she's a 2, 2, 3, and you get an ability. And she's got a bunch of cards that do things based on what version you're on. And then eventually you get to version 3, which then she's a 3, 2, 3. And the progress counters after that, you could just exchange them to deal 2 damage. So that's cool. Spider Ham's our first cartoon character, our only cartoon character at the time of this recording, anyways. Um, and he every time he would take a point of damage, you get a toon counter, and you could spin a toon counter as a wild resource, which that's awesome. SPDR, she actually has 2 cards for the pilot, which is Penny Parker, is her alter ego, and then it becomes what's called an interface, and so she has these interfaces that she can use to pay for her cards. She gets some kind of bonus, and they're resources that stay out. So, and then she's got her suit here. So she actually has a hand size of 3 when in hero form, and when you're in alter ego, you have the suit in this form, which is it's what the suit is inactive right now. Um, but yeah, so her hand size is small, but once you get the 5 interfaces out, that's you've got more than enough resources to pay for cards. So that's amazing. Um, so my favorite for wave 5 is got to be Ironheart. I love the building the suit to the different versions. That's awesome, and it's kind of like a little mini game that can how long is it going to take you to get your suit built up. She also introduced the card Ingenuity, which helps anyone who's a genius, like Iron Man and Rocket. Those are a couple, or even Bruce Banner. So when you're playing the Hulk and you're Bruce Banner, he can have an Ingenuity as well. So yeah, that there were some amazing cards, and this was a fun wave, revisiting the Spider-Man and having the Web Warrior tribal. The Web Warriors is amazing. Wave 6. Okay, so Wave 6 gives us the X-Men. People have been wanting the X-Men since the beginning of the game, and when Marvel Champions got to the X-Men, they decided for the first wave, they did an extra large wave. So we got Mutant Genesis, which gives us Colossus and Shadowcat. The same day, we got Cyclops and Phoenix as well. So we got 4 heroes in one day. That was amazing. Um, So this was a little larger than the normal wave, but it was introducing the X-Men. So Colossus can have an additional tough. So he was a character, the only hero that's allowed to have more than one tough status. We got a modular set Armadillo, which he can have multiple toughs, but hey, you can't play as Armadillo. But as Colossus, at least you got to have more than one tough. And then he can discard toughs to get different bonuses. And then he had ways to get extra toughs. So that was amazing. Shadowcat was kind of similar to Vision. She has a phased form, and her phased form is like forced to go to solid. But every time you did an attack or a defend, you switch. If you were phase, you had to switch to solid. If you're solid, you may switch to phase. So you kind of played a game during the hero phase where you want to try to end the hero phase phased. That ideally. So that's pretty fun. Cyclops was our hero of this wave that can break the normal deck building rules. He's allowed to have X-Men from any aspect. He also has a thing called Field Commander, where if you get that out, he takes his turn first, no matter who has their turn order. The first player marker. Colossus will go. I mean, Cyclops will go first. Um, if Field Commander's out. He also has a bunch of upgrades that you can attach to minions and villains, but they had temporary. They go away at the end of the turn unless he has Field Commander out. This introduced some of the cards that other products had later on as well that do damage. You could there's a couple of attacks that only work if the target has an upgrade. Cyclops is one of the characters that can attach an upgrade. Phoenix. Now, Phoenix is very interesting. So she's got her Phoenix form where she's either contained or she's unleashed, or restrained or unleashed. So when she's restrained, she's a 3/1/2. So Phoenix is our only character that has a 3 thwart, which is amazing. But when she's unleashed, that switches to a 3 attack. Um, Other heroes can get up to 3, like Spectrum, say, for example, but Phoenix actually started with 3, which was awesome. Wolverine, he's claws. You can actually take damage equal to the cost of a card to play that card for free when it's an attack event. So, like uppercut, for example, you spend 3 and you do 3. You take 3 hit points of damage and you can do the 5 damage. Storm had a deck kind of like Doctor Strange, her weather deck, but she got so there were extra cards that weren't part of her normal 15, and you got to choose what the weather condition was, and that affected the entire battlefield. It affected heroes and enemies alike. So you can give people a +1 attack or -1 attack, or you can make everyone stalwart. Um, and then she got some kind of benefit, and she could change the weather once per turn. Then she also had some other cards that could change the weather, um, so you could do it more often. Gambit, Gambit had some really cool cards that for he came in Justice, and he had some cards for thwarting when you're an alter ego. He has his Creel Lover or Creel Charmer, I think it's called, where he can thwart when he's an alter ego, and then he had some new Justice cards that work for thwarting when you're an alter ego, which is amazing. Plus, he also had charge counters, so he put charge counters on him, and then when he did his attacks, he could spend up to 3 charges. Sometimes each charge and it would do an extra damage, and it might have a secondary effect, like maybe it's piercing or overkill, depending on the card. And Rogue. Now, Rogue is fun. She has a card called Touched, and when she puts it on someone, she gets a bonus she gets a different ability whether they're the villain, a minion, or an ally, or another hero. She also gains all the traits of the person that she has touched. So, like, say if Rogue teamed up with Vision, well, now Rogue's an android, so she could use the android cards, or she touches an Avenger, now she could legally play the Quinn carrier, so because she's an Avenger, um, and and then Rogue has different cards that did different things based on if you uh, if they had the touched on them, and if they were a villain or whatever. All right, so the question is, who's my favorite? Well, this is kind of tough because I really like a lot of these characters, and I like them all for different reasons. Um, but I think the winner is Rogue. I really love being able to play around with the different traits, and the touched is pretty fun for, and you can come up with some very unique deck building ideas that, I mean, you can put like an Avenger minion in, or Avenger ally in your deck, which then you could put a Quinn carrier in your deck, and then as long as you touch your Avenger ally, you are now an Avenger. You can legally play the Quinn carrier. So even like in a later turn, you are no longer an Avenger, but you've already got the Quinn carrier out. So that's cool. So I'm going to say Rogue is Wave 6 winner. All right, Wave 7. So Wave 7 was our X Force wave. Also, part 2 of the Mutant trilogy. So that's awesome. More mutant fun, but this was with the darker side of the X-Men, the X-Force. So in the next evolution box, we got Cable and Domino. So Cable was another one of our deck builder rule breaker. Cable was allowed to have player side schemes from out of aspect in his deck. So a player side scheme is similar to the villain side scheme, except and you were restricted on the number that can be out at a time. So if you're playing one or two players, you're only allowed to have one player side scheme out at a time. If you have three or four players, you can have two player side schemes. Um, Player side schemes, for the most part, don't hurt you. There is an exception. But once you defeated it, most of them went into the victory display. There are a couple exceptions as well. Um, and Cable got a bonus for the side schemes that are in the more side schemes that are in the victory display, the better some of his cards were. And that also includes any normal side schemes that have victory on them. So, for example, the artifacts from the collector. When you defeat that, you get the bonus. It goes in the victory display. Those would count for Cable, because he in the victory display. When you play against Hela and you defeat the side schemes, that helps Cable. However, if Cable puts more side schemes in the deck, that really helps Hela, because Hela gets a bonus for all the side schemes that are in there. Domino is fun. She discards cards from the top of her deck, and she gets to count wild as doubles. And so she's got a lot of cards that when it says discard the top card of your deck and add like +1 for each resource printed on that card, or what each resource on that card. Well, she gets to double the wilds. So a lot of those. So if you put a lot of cards with a wild on them, that helps her power out dramatically. Psylocke, she has a lot of psionic cards, which are cool. She also has two upgrades that are permanent. So that's a psi knife on one side and a psi katana on the other side. They also provide a resource. So she's only a hand size 4 because of that, but she's got two permanent resources that are out, kind of like SPDR in a way. And you can, but based on her cards, are you get a different bonus based on if they're on the katana or the knife side. Angel Angel came out at the same time as Psylocke, and he's another one of the triple changers. So they went back to the triple changers. We haven't seen them since Ant-Man and Wasp. So he's got and he also has well, he has an action. He doesn't get it when you change forms like Ant-Man, but when you're in a particular form, he has a unique ability. So when he's an alter ego, he can just as an action heal one. When he's Angel, he after you play an aerial event, you get to draw a card. And then on the other side, he's Archangel. And when he's Archangel, when you play an aerial card and you deal damage to an enemy equal to the event's printed cost. So you get to do extra damage. So like it doesn't matter what the area. So like even if it's like an aerial thwart, you thwart, and then it costs 2. Okay, you get to do 2 points of damage. But he has an acceleration token. So while he is in our Archangel form, there's a built-in um, acceleration token. X-23. X-23 is kind of like Wolverine, where she's got her claws. She can take a point of damage to ready herself. Her claws gives her extra damage. But her big power is her signature ally, Honey Badger. And when Honey Badger activates, you can ready X-23, and she's got a lot of bonuses when Honey Badger is out. I mean, she's still a great hero when Honey Badger's not out, but when Honey Badger is out, that's amazing. And then we have Deadpool. Now, Deadpool, we can't have X Force without Deadpool, of course. Deadpool's crazy. He, if he is ever, if he's defeated, what happens is you flip him to alter ego and you put an acceleration token on. So he actually isn't defeated. He'll have 1 hit point and he'll be in alter ego. Um, and he likes to take damage. So his power is he's got a lot of cards that the more damage you sustain, the more powerful they can be. And then he has ways where you can take as much damage as you want to do something. And he came up with the 5th aspect. So his hero pack was like the size of a normal scenario pack, like say Green Goblin or the Hood, something like that. It was about that amount of cards and about the same price tag. But so you got a whole new aspect. Now, the pool aspect doesn't have as many cards in it as aggression and justice in them, but had quite a few cards, and those dealt with the different statuses like acceleration. They a lot of those cards had printed symbols on them, so like there'll be accelerations or hazards or crisis, and you got different bonuses based on the number of those kind of symbols that are out. His player side, player side scheme for pool actually has all 4 of those symbols, but everyone gets +2 hand size. So that's when I mentioned Cable that most player side schemes are helpful. Well, this one's helpful for a while, then because the +2 hand size is great, but eventually all those bad statuses is going to catch up with you. So the question is, who's my favorite here for Wave 7? I'm going to say Domino. Uh, I just, I love the, I just love her deck building. I love being able to discard cards, try to get as many wilds. She's pretty powerful with, like when she get her pistols out and like sharpshooter, she can just dish out a lot of damage. And it's just she comes with the posse, which gives her some different bonuses. There are a bunch of allies that have the posse trait, which is great. And yeah, it's just it's just fun to and the jackpot card, which is her only non-wild resource card that comes in her deck, but it has the other 3, and that card is when you discard it from the top of your deck, you shuffle it back into your deck. So ideally, you try to keep the jackpot card going, through the entire deck pass, which is great. So that's wave 7 of Domino. And now for wave 8, which is the current wave. At the time of this recording, we're a couple weeks out for Agents of Shield, which will be the beginning of wave 9. But this is the final wave for the Mutant trilogy, the Age of Apocalypse. We got Bishop and Magik in the Age of Apocalypse. So Bishop is pretty awesome. He has his energy absorption, and you want to have a lot of resources in your deck, because with him is he takes when he takes any amount of damage from an attack, you discard an equal number of cards from the top of your deck, and for each resource card discarded that way, you get to add it to your hand. And then, like his uniform, when you play that, then it's like you can heal based on the number of resources that you have in your hand. And of course, you got these extra resources in your hand then to pay for cards and stuff during the hero phase. So that's awesome. Magik gets to play with the top card of her deck face up. And that's pretty important because she's got a lot of cards that says if you have, say, a mental or a wild on the card on top, you get this bonus when you play a card. And she can also swap cards with the top card of her deck with Limbo. And it's really fun manipulating what cards you want to put on top to trigger the different bonuses. Iceman has these what's called frostbite tokens, and whenever he attacks or he defends against an enemy, you put a frostbite. A frostbite is kind of like a little mini um well, it, it's a debuff upgrade. It's a tactic, I believe, so that helps Cyclops. If you have a team up with them, those two, and the villain or the minion, whoever has the frostbite on their next activation, they're going to get a -1 scheme or attack, which is great. He also has a card that's kind of like webbed up, where it turns off an activation, and then after that activation, then they get a frostbite. So they're not stunned or confused, but they'll get a -1, which works against someone who's stalwart, say, where webbed up would not, they would not get the stun. Jubilee's big power is using different resources for her cards, and so she gets extra bonuses based on the number of different resources that she played. She's also got her sunglasses and her coat, which gives her bonuses, which is awesome. Nightcrawler's all about the Bamf tokens. So he's got these the Bamf upgrades that he can put on an enemy, and that allows him to defend against that enemy without having to exhaust, which is great. So he can if you set it up right, he can defend for, like, especially like say in a 2-player game, he can defend for both players without playing protection a lot of times. So that is pretty cool. And then our latest hero is Magneto, and Magneto is all about magnetic cards. So every card in his kit has the magnetic trait on it, and he has what's called a magnetic pull, that he can discard cards from the top of his deck until he gets a magnetic card discarded this way, add the magnetic card to his hand. Now he's got a couple upgrades that he gets a bonus um, for each card that was discarded. You look at the resources. He's got a card that gives him a bonus for that. He's another character that discards cards on the top of his deck, kind of like Domino and Bishop in a way. So, like the Digging Deep, which came in Domino, since Digging Deep does not have the magnetic keyword, he would put the Digging Deeps in his hand and keep continuing the magnetic pull, which is awesome. And then he can wrap people in metal, and then he can throw them he can throw a non-elite minion and another character, similar to the villain Magneto that we had early in Mutant Genesis. So that's pretty cool. Um, but who is my favorite of these six heroes? I'm going to have to say Magic. Um, Being able to play with the top card of your deck, manipulating that is awesome. And yeah, it's pretty fun um, playing with the deck that way, and manipulating Limbo so that you can trigger the combo when you need it. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, so that was my favorite character way for each wave 1 through 8. Um, and we're eagerly awaiting the arrival of the beginning of wave 9, which is the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, so thank you for watching, everyone. Please like and subscribe and click the notification bell.